In the heart of Ireland, when summer rises to its full glory, the land itself seems to shimmer with a golden pulse. The tall grasses sway like waves of liquid sunlight, brushing against bare ankles and knees with the gentlest of touches, as though the earth longs to caress those who walk upon it. Lakes glisten beneath the sky, holding the reflections of drifting clouds, and the warm winds carry scents of honey, wildflowers, and distant fires. The air is heavy with a promise of joy, of passion, of something fleeting yet unforgettable. It is in this season, in this glowing and intoxicating atmosphere, that the presence of a goddess is most keenly felt. Her name is whispered with reverence and longing. Aine, goddess of summer, of love, of sovereignty, of seduction. She is not a figure that hides within shadows or cloaks herself in storm. She is the brilliance of the midday sun, dazzling, unrelenting, impossible to look upon without feeling a stir deep in the body and heart. Aine is the radiance that warms bare skin, the rhythm that makes lovers draw nearer, the sweetness that tempts one to linger in fields long after twilight has come. She is elusive, yes, but never distant. She is felt in every golden stalk of wheat, in every shimmering ripple on the surface of the water, in every sigh carried by the summer breeze. To speak of Aine is to speak of life itself in its most intoxicating moment. She is the breath of the earth when it is heavy with ripeness, when every fruit, every flower, every creature is caught in the spell of desire. For Aine embodies not only love as tenderness, but love as fire, as hunger, as a force that can ignite joy or consume entirely. Those who invoke her name in midsummer rituals do so with trembling hands, for they know she is as generous as she is dangerous. She can bestow abundance, fertility to the fields, passion to the lovers, joy to the heart, but she can also strip away illusions, leaving only raw, aching truth. The ancient people who lived under the wide Irish skies told stories of her that shimmered like mirages. Some said she was a queen of the fairies, radiant and playful, leading mortals into wild dances under the moon. Others claimed she was a goddess older than memory, a being of sovereignty itself, choosing who might rule the land by favoring or rejecting them. All agreed, however, on her power to enchant and to wound. To embrace Aine was to embrace ecstasy, but to betray her was to taste despair. Her duality is not one of contradiction, but of completeness. Aine is the warm light of the sun, yes, but also the heat that scorches. She is the kiss that lingers sweetly on the lips, and also the longing that gnaws when love turns away. She gives without hesitation, yet she cannot be possessed. She belongs to no one, not even to the kings who sought to bind her, not even to the mortals who begged her for affection. She is the wild pulse of the season itself, joyous, burning, impossible to hold. Legends say
that on the night of midsummer, when the air is thick and the veil between worlds thins, Ain's presence becomes almost unbearable in its intensity. Fires are lit on hilltops, sparks rising into the dark like golden birds. Lovers steal away to hidden places, compelled by desires they can hardly name. Farmers walk the edges of their fields, murmuring prayers that Ain will bless their crops with ripeness. In these moments, she is everywhere. In the rustle of leaves, in the laughter spilling out into the night, in the sudden touch of warmth on the skin. Some claim to have seen her then, a woman with hair like molten gold, flowing down her shoulders like streams of sunlight, eyes alight with both tenderness and challenge. She is said to move like the wind, her presence both comforting and unsettling, stirring the soul as much as the body.
And yet, there is a warning woven into every tale of Aine. She is no gentle muse who offers her gifts without cost. To desire her is to step into a fire that both warms and burns. The kings of Ireland, drawn to her brilliance, sought to bind her to their side, to claim her as queen, as lover, as symbol of their sovereignty. But Aine does not yield easily, and when she is betrayed, her wrath is quiet but devastating. There are stories of men who sought to possess her and were left hollow, wandering, broken. There are tales of her withdrawing her favor, leaving fields barren and hearts heavy with longing. To disrespect Aine is to disrespect the rhythm of life itself, the balance of joy and sorrow, giving and taking. Still she is adored. How could she not be? The promise she offers is irresistible. She represents the fullness of living, the sweetness of surrendering to desire, the joy of embracing a fleeting moment of beauty. To love Aine even briefly is to experience a taste of immortality. The memory of her touch lingers like sunlight on skin long after dusk has fallen. She is the whisper in the tall grasses, the echo of laughter in the hills, the shimmer of a dream one cannot quite let go of. When one speaks of Aine, it is not only her stories that are told, but the way she makes one feel, alive, yearning, trembling on the edge of joy and sorrow. The myth of Aine is not just a tale of gods and mortals. It is the embodiment of summer itself, of the way the world feels when the sun is at its peak, and every breath is heavy with warmth and promise. In this way, Aine is both near and distant. She is the goddess who walks barefoot through the fields of mortals, yet remains untouchable. She is the one who blesses with abundance, yet demands reverence. She is both the sigh of fulfillment and the ache of longing. To know Aine is to know that beauty cannot be held forever, that desire is both gift and curse, and that the fire of life burns brightest when it threatens to consume. So as the Irish summer stretches across the land, as the rivers glitter and the winds dance with heat, Aine's story begins, not as a fable of distant gods, but as a whisper that touches every heart. Her myth is a mirror, reflecting the desires and fears that dwell within us all. She is the golden radiance of the season, the fleeting ecstasy of love, the dangerous seduction of power.
She is Aine, and her presence is the pulse of summer itself.
To tell the story of Ain, one cannot linger on her alone, radiant though she is. Like the sun, she illuminates all who come near her, drawing them into her orbit, binding them to her myth. The figures who surround her, mortals, kings, even the quiet presence of nature, are not merely background. They are vessels of longing, embodiments of humanity's fragile attempt to touch the divine. They reveal who Ain is by the way they gaze upon her, by the way their lives unravel in the light of her presence. Ain herself stands at the center, a goddess who needs no crown, no throne, no temple built of stone. She is her own dominion. Her sovereignty is carved into the land itself, in the hills that rise to greet the dawn, in the fertile soil heavy with promise. She is irresistible not because she demands attention, but because she embodies it. Every movement, every glance from her eyes carries the weight of something beyond mortal comprehension. She is the allure of fire that beckons the moth, the beauty of the fruit that tempts the hungry hand. Yet behind her smile lies an untouchable majesty. She may let herself be desired. She may even allow herself to be loved. But she is never truly owned. To imagine her is to see a woman whose hair glows like strands of sunlight spun into silk, whose skin holds the warmth of midsummer evenings, whose voice carries both comfort and command. Yet Ain is not defined by her physical form alone. She is fluid, a shape that changes with the gaze of the beholder. To some she appears as a maiden, radiant and free, laughter on her lips. To others she is a queen, regal and distant, a sovereign who chooses who shall reign and who shall fall. To lovers, she is a goddess of irresistible intimacy, the kind of closeness that leaves one trembling. She is every facet of desire, every shade of longing.
But even a goddess cannot exist in isolation, for desire requires an object, a reflection, a mirror. Around Aine gather the mortals who, in their weakness and hunger, reveal the depth of her power. The kings of Ireland are the most often remembered in the tales. To them, Aine was more than a goddess of love. She was the very key to their rule. For sovereignty in the ancient telling was not merely won by battle or claimed by lineage, it was conferred by the goddess. To lie with Aine, to win her favor, was to bind oneself to the land, to ensure that the soil would yield and the people would thrive. Without her blessing, even the strongest king might find his reign barren, his people restless, his fields cursed with drought. Thus the kings desired her not only as a woman, radiant and sensual, but as a symbol of legitimacy, of eternal power. Yet therein lay the danger. To seek Aine's love with ambition rather than devotion was to misunderstand her entirely. She could give herself as freely as sunlight spilling across a field, but the moment her gift was taken for granted, the warmth turned to fire, and the fire to ruin. Many kings learned this lesson too late, seduced by the glow of her presence, only to find themselves undone by the wrath that followed their betrayal. Among mortals, Aine's lovers were countless and varied. Farmers whispered prayers to her as they sowed their seeds, imagining her blessing their furrows, imagining her smile in every bloom that rose. Shepherds gazed at the horizon as the sun dipped, wondering if the golden shimmer on the hills was her hair flowing in the breeze. Young women sought her counsel in dreams, feeling her presence stir their hearts toward courage and freedom. Lovers of every kind turned their faces toward the summer sky, feeling her warmth upon their skin, longing to know her touch. There are stories of men who claimed to have danced with her by the lake, their arms encircling a figure of fire and gold. Others spoke of visions, Aine appearing at their bedside, her eyes alight with both tenderness and danger, pressing a kiss to their lips that lingered long after waking. Whether these were truths or dreams mattered little. The power of Aine lay not in what could be proven, but in what could be felt. To believe in her was to feel her, to ache for her, to sense her presence in every beat of summer's heart.
And then there is nature itself. Unlike the fickle hearts of men, nature does not betray or misunderstand her. Nature is Aine's most faithful companion, her most honest reflection. The earth blooms when she is joyous. Flowers burst into riots' color. Wheat fields ripple with abundance. Bees hum with ecstatic purpose. But when she is slighted, when her sovereignty is disrespected, the land responds with equal fury. Storms rise suddenly on lakes where once only calm shimmered. Winds grow sharp, stripping the warmth from the air. Crops wither, the soil grows stubborn, and the sweetness of summer turns bitter. In this way, nature speaks her moods louder than words ever could. Nature, too, seems to long for her. The rivers stretch toward her, as if yearning to hold her reflection a moment longer. The hills seem to bend beneath her steps, shaping themselves to her will. The moon, though belonging to another goddess, lingers fondly when Aine dances beneath it, as if reluctant to let her go. Even the animals of the fields, the birds of the sky, respond to her presence. Their calls soften, their movements align with her rhythms. In this sense, Aine is not merely a goddess within the natural world. She is its heart, its pulse, the secret reason why summer feels so intoxicating. And yet, though nature adores her, and mortals pine for her, and kings seek to claim her, Aine remains ever herself, sovereign, radiant, untouchable in her essence. The figures who surround her are reflections of human longing. They reveal our hunger for beauty, our thirst for love, our desperation to capture something eternal. But Aine reminds us by her very nature that such things cannot be possessed. They can only be experienced, cherished, and released. To know Aine, then, is to know the characters who circle her, the kings who desire her sovereignty,
who betray her and suffer the consequence, the mortals who glimpse her in dreams and awaken trembling with longing, the farmers and shepherds who whisper her name into the soil and the wind, hoping for her blessing, and nature itself, ever faithful, mirroring her every mood, carrying her essence in every blade of grass and every breath of air. Each of them reveals a different aspect of the goddess. Each of them is bound to her not by chains, but by desire, by reverence, by awe. They are all threads woven into the tapestry of her myth, shimmering and fragile, yet enduring. And at the center of it all, Ain herself shines with a light that no king, no lover, no force of nature can diminish. For she is summer's pulse, and they, whether mortal or divine, are merely hearts learning to beat in rhythm with her.
The radiance of Ain did not merely inspire worship, it awakened hunger. To see her was to feel a stirring that could not be ignored, a force that pulled at the heart with equal parts awe and desire. And so it was inevitable that mortals, especially kings, would seek more than her blessing. They wanted her. They wanted her beauty, her embrace, her sovereignty. They wanted to bind her to their side, to possess the sun itself, as though such a thing could be claimed. Among these tales one rises again and again, like a wound that refuses to close. The story of a king who desired Ain, not only as a woman, but as a symbol of his power. His name shifts with the tellings, sometimes remembered as Ailil Aulam, sometimes blurred into the faceless figure of every man who ever tried to own what could never be owned. But the essence remains the same. He saw Ain's light and mistook it for something he could seize, as though her radiance were a jewel to wear, a crown to adorn his ambition. He pursued her as one pursues prey, though he cloaked his hunger in words of love. He spoke of devotion, of union, of destiny. Yet beneath each syllable beat the pulse of conquest. For to lie with Ain was no mere act of passion. It was to grasp sovereignty itself, to tether the land to his reign. He looked at her not only with desire, but with calculation. And that gaze, sharp with ambition, was the first crack in the delicate dance between goddess and mortal. Ain, radiant and elusive, did not flee at once. She was the summer wind, teasing and shifting, letting him glimpse what he longed for, yet never quite granting it. She let her laughter linger in the air around him, let the golden shimmer of her presence haunt his nights. To him, this felt like encouragement, as though the goddess herself invited his pursuit. But Ain was no mortal maiden to be wooed by persistence. She was testing him, weighing the balance between true devotion and selfish hunger.
Desire grew wild within the king. Each glimpse of her only deepened his longing, until it burned within him like fever. He dreamed of her hair spilling across his chest, of her lips pressed to his, of her body entwined with his own beneath the blazing stars of midsummer. Yet his dreams were never free of ambition. Even in his most intimate imaginings, she wore a crown that made him king by her side.
passion and power tangled in him until they were indistinguishable. And in that tangle lay the seed of ruin. The conflict between them was not loud at first. It was subtle, a tension felt in the air whenever he drew near. He would reach for her, and she would slip away, leaving only warmth where her body had been. He would speak of destiny, and she would answer with silence that cut deeper than any word. The more she eluded him, the more desperate he became, until desire hardened into obsession. And Anna, for all her brilliance, was not immune to the weight of his longing. There were moments, brief, dangerous moments, when she let herself linger near him. Perhaps she pitied him. Perhaps she was curious. Or perhaps she simply mirrored the passion she saw burning in him, like fire drawn to fire. In those moments, when her golden eyes locked with his, the air grew thick with possibility. If she chose to, she could have given herself to him fully, surrendering to passion for a night, for a heartbeat. The thought was intoxicating. For Anna was not untouched by desire. She was its embodiment. Yet, every time the moment neared its breaking point, something in her pulled back. For Anna could taste the ambition that tainted his hunger. She could feel how his hands, though tender in promise, sought to claim rather than cherish. She could sense that he longed not only for her love, but for her sovereignty, her divinity, her essence. And Anna, sovereign above all else, could never be bound. The tension grew unbearable. Their encounters became a battle of wills, a dance between flame and shadow. He would pursue, and she would evade. He would beg, and she would laugh. He would declare his love, and she would remind him, through a glance, a gesture, that love is not possession. The more she resisted, the more his desire sharpened into desperation. The people whispered of this struggle, though few dared speak of it openly. They saw their king grow restless, his eyes haunted by visions he would not name. They noticed the fields growing temperamental, harvests swelling one year and faltering the next, as though the land itself were caught in the throes of the goddess's moods. They knew that Ane was near, and that the king's pursuit of her was more than lust. It was a challenge to the balance between mortal rule and divine sovereignty. For Ane was not simply a woman to be loved. She was the embodiment of the land itself. To dishonor her was to dishonor the earth, to violate the sacred bond between ruler and ruled. The tension between them was not only personal, but cosmic, a struggle between freedom and control, between wild desire and the arrogance of possession. The king's obsession reached a point of no return. Desire had consumed him utterly. He no longer saw her as a goddess to be worshipped, nor as a woman to be cherished. He saw her as a prize, as proof of his power, as the key to immortality. And Ane, radiant and sovereign, became the mirror
in which his ambition revealed itself in all its raw hunger. This is the moment where desire becomes danger. For Ane, though seductive, though radiant, though generous in her gifts, cannot be bound without consequence. Her love is free, wild, unpossessable. To attempt to hold her against her will is to kindle a fire that consumes not only the one who dares, but everything he touches. And so the conflict sharpened, inevitable as the sun's descent at dusk. Passion had led her to her, but ambition turned passion into violation. Longing had drawn her near, but sovereignty demanded distance. Their story, charged with the intensity of love and danger, teetered on the edge of a precipice from which there could be no return. Theirs was no longer the gentle dance of desire, but the storm that follows when fire is denied its freedom.
The night of midsummer came heavy with heat, as though the very air itself had been steeped in longing. Fires burned on the hills, their sparks drifting upward like golden birds. The fields glowed under the silver eye of the moon, and the lake lay still, a mirror to both sky and flame. It was on such a night, thick with possibility and trembling with power, that Aine and the king's story reached its inevitable breaking point. He had followed her here, to the edge of the water where reeds whispered and the air carried the fragrance of wildflowers. She stood before him, her hair a cascade of molten gold spilling over her shoulders, her skin radiant with the warmth of the season itself. She was at once distant and near, her gaze soft but unyielding, her body shimmering with the allure of summer's fullness. To look upon her was to forget everything else, to feel the world narrow into a single, unbearable point of desire. The king approached as though bewitched, though no spell compelled him, only the fever of his own longing. His heart thundered within his chest, each beat a drum, urging him forward. He spoke her name like a prayer, trembling, desperate, his voice breaking as he begged for her love, her touch, her favor. His words tumbled over one another, a mixture of devotion and desperation, of tenderness and greed. Aine listened in silence, her eyes never leaving his. There was no cruelty in her stillness, only the weight of eternity. She let him pour out his hunger, let him speak of destiny, of love that would bind them together, of power that would make him immortal in name and reign. She let him step closer, let him reach out a trembling hand to touch the golden strands of her hair. For a moment, just a moment, she did not pull away. The air thickened. He touched her, and she did not vanish like mist. His fingers brushed her hair, his palm cupped her cheek, and she allowed it. His heart surged. He leaned forward, and she did not stop him. The distance between them collapsed, and the king pressed his lips to hers.
The kiss was fire. It seared through him, consuming every nerve, every thought, every doubt. She was warmth and sweetness, storm and sunlight, tenderness and danger all at once. Her lips tasted of wild honey. Her body radiated heat like the heart of summer itself. He felt as though he were dissolving into her, as though every boundary between them was shattering, as though he were becoming part of the very essence of the goddess. And for a moment, Aina kissed him back. It was not surrender, not compliance. It was something more dangerous. It was the goddess allowing him to feel, for one heartbeat, what it meant to touch the divine. Her lips pressed against his, her body leaned into his, her breath mingled with his own. In that moment, he felt infinite. The stars themselves seemed to tremble. He could taste eternity burning sweetly on his tongue. But desire, when poisoned by ambition, cannot remain pure. In the rush of passion, the king's hunger twisted into something darker. His hands, once trembling with reverence, grew possessive, insistent. He grasped at her as though to anchor her, to hold her, to claim her. His body pressed harder against hers. His embrace became an attempt to bind rather than to cherish. In his fevered mind, the kiss was no longer communion. It was conquest. And that was when everything shifted. Aina's lips stilled against his. Her body, once yielding like sunlight, became as cold as stone. She drew back, her eyes burning not with tenderness, but with a fierce golden fire that seared deeper than any flame. She looked at him, and in her gaze he saw his mistake reflected with merciless clarity. "You would claim me," she said, her voice soft, almost gentle, yet edged with an authority that shook the air. "You would bind me as though I were a prize to be seized, a crown to be worn. You would take my love not as a gift, but as a possession." The king faltered, his breath catching. He reached for her again, desperate, pleading, but Aina's form shimmered like heat on the horizon, slipping away from his grasp. Her hair flared with golden light, her body radiated an intensity that was almost unbearable. She was no longer a woman in his arms. She was the goddess, the sun incarnate, sovereign and untouchable.
He fell to his knees, trembling, begging for forgiveness, for another kiss, for her embrace. His words spilled out in a torrent of sorrow and desire, but Aine's face held no softness now. She had given him a taste of the divine, and he had sought to twist it into chains. For that, there could be no second chance. Her voice rang out, low and resonant, carrying across the still lake and into the night. Love cannot be forced. Desire cannot be shackled. I am not yours to claim. I am the fire that warms and the fire that burns. You touched me, and for a moment I gave you eternity. But you sought to own what cannot be owned, and now you will feel the weight of that folly. As her words fell into the night, the air itself shifted. Clouds swept across the moon, casting shadows over the land. The lake rippled violently, waves rising as though stirred by an unseen hand. The warm breeze turned sharp, cutting against the king's skin like blades. The earth, once lush and inviting, trembled beneath him. The king wept, clutching at the ground, his desire now a torment that could never be satisfied. He had held eternity for a heartbeat, only to feel it vanish from his grasp. The taste of her lips lingered like a wound, sweeter and more painful than any blade. He cried out for her, but she was already fading, her form dissolving into the golden shimmer of the night, leaving only her voice echoing on the wind. Love me as you love the summer. Embrace me while I am here. Let me go when I must. Seek to bind me, and you will bind only your own sorrow. And then she was gone. The fire of passion that had once filled him now curdled into heartbreak, into a hunger that would never again be satisfied. He had touched the divine, and in doing so had condemned himself to eternal longing. His heart would never again beat without the ache of her absence. His lips would never again kiss without recalling the fire of hers. His reign, once secure, would wither beneath the weight of his folly, for the goddess had withdrawn her favor, and without her blessing, sovereignty crumbles. The people would speak of this night in hushed tones. They would remember the king who sought to bind Aine, and the goddess who kissed him only to leave him broken. They would remember how the fields grew barren, how storms rose unbidden, how the warmth of summer turned unpredictable and sharp. And they would remember Aine not as a victim, nor as a prize, but as sovereign, as radiant, as the untouchable fire of desire itself. For this was the climax of her myth, the moment when passion, at its brightest and most intoxicating, revealed its inevitable shadow. Love turned to possession, desire turned to destruction, and Aine in her brilliance reminded the world that she could be adored, worshipped, cherished, but never owned. The kiss, the fire, the heartbreak, these would echo forever, haunting every lover who dared to dream of her.
The night of passion and betrayal did not end when Aine vanished into the shimmering veil of summer air. Its consequence lingered, weaving itself into the soil, the sky, and the hearts of mortals who depended on the fragile balance between goddess and king. What began as one man's hunger became the sorrow of a kingdom, for Aine's departure was never quiet. When she withdraws, she takes with her not only her body of light, but also the warmth that binds the land to abundance. The king staggered from the lake shore, broken by the loss of what he had so briefly tasted. His lips still burned with the memory of her kiss, his chest still throbbed with the fire she had set there, but it was a wound that would never heal. Desire had been given shape, then snatched away, leaving behind only emptiness. He returned to his halls, no longer the ruler he had been, but a man hollowed by longing. His eyes restless, his nights restless, his very spirit restless. And the land reflected his ruin. Where once fields had swelled with golden grain, the soil grew hesitant. Crops faltered,
some shriveling before their time, others failing to ripen. Cattle grew uneasy, wandering as though searching for something lost. Even the air seemed less forgiving. The breezes carried not only warmth, but sudden chills, as if Ain's laughter had been replaced by whispers of warning. The people who depended upon their king's bond with the goddess felt unease take root in their hearts. They looked at their harvests with uncertainty, at their sky with fear, at their ruler with suspicion. Ain, however, was not gone entirely. She never disappears from the world she embodies. She was still in the shimmer of sunlight that broke through storm clouds, still in the sudden burst of wildflowers that bloomed defiantly at the edges of barren fields. She was still in the laughter of lovers stealing moments in the meadows, still in the heat of the midsummer sun that scorched as much as it blessed. But her presence was no longer constant, no longer a steady gift. It had become elusive, unpredictable, bittersweet. She had withdrawn her favor, asserting through absence what she had declared in words. She could not be possessed.
For Ayin is not a goddess of chains or crowns, she is a goddess of sovereignty. Sovereignty is not a thing that can be seized, it is a gift, one granted freely, one withdrawn when disrespected. By attempting to bind her, the king had severed the sacred bond, and sovereignty slipped through his fingers like water. He remained on his throne, yes, but it was a throne stripped of divine blessing. His reign grew brittle, fragile as dry leaves, his authority undermined not by war or rebellion, but by the quiet certainty that Ayin no longer stood with him. And though his halls were filled with courtiers and servants, though his armies still marched at his command, he was alone. For every face he looked upon reminded him of her. Every golden-haired maiden recalled her radiance. Every warm summer breeze carried her scent. Every flicker of laughter in the fields echoed her voice. The goddess had left him, but she lingered everywhere, haunting him in every shadow of beauty. This was his punishment, not the strike of a sword, not the curse of a plague, but the eternal yearning for something once touched and never to be touched again. He had known her embrace, had tasted the divine, and in losing it he discovered a hunger that nothing mortal could ever satisfy. His meals turned tasteless, his wines bitter, his pleasures hollow. Even love, when offered by others, only deepened the wound, for none could ignite the fire he had known in Ayin's kiss. He was transformed, not into a monster, not into a ghost, but into something more tragic, a man alive, yet condemned to carry eternity's absence within him. The people told his story in whispers, passing it down through generations. Some said that at night he would return to the lake where he first kissed Ayin, wandering its shores like a man bewitched, calling out her name into the darkness. Others claimed that he wasted away slowly, his body succumbing to the emptiness in his soul. Still others said he lived long, far longer than any man should, as though cursed to endure his yearning for his many summers as Ayin had once given. Each telling was different, yet all agreed on one truth: his desire had broken him, and his punishment was longing without end. Nature, too, held memory of that night. There were years when the summer burned too hot, the fields withering beneath relentless sun, as though Ayin's fire blazed in anger. Other years rains fell heavy,
drowning seeds, as though her tears soaked the soil. And then there were rare years when she seemed to forgive, when fields burst with abundance, when flowers bloomed so wildly that hillsides glowed with color, when lovers swore they felt her warmth embrace them as they kissed in the tall grass. These were glimpses of her favor, fleeting and precious, reminders that Ayin could still be adored, still be worshipped, even if she could never again be bound. The outcome of her story was not destruction, but transformation. For Ayin is not a goddess who ends with ruin. She is a goddess who teaches through longing. She left the king broken, yes, but in his sorrow lay a lesson for all who would come after him. Desire is a gift, not a possession. Love is a flame that burns freely, not a torch to be held in chains. Sovereignty is not taken but granted, and only those who honor its freedom may enjoy its blessings.
And so, as the generations passed, On's myth grew larger than the sorrow of one king. She became the whisper in midsummer rituals, the reason bonfires burned high on the hills, the reason lovers kissed beneath the solstice moon. She was adored not because she could be possessed, but because she could never be. Her beauty became eternal precisely because it was fleeting, her love divine precisely because it could not be forced. On herself, radiant and sovereign, remained unchanged. She was still the golden-haired goddess who danced through fields, who swam in lakes, who kissed with the fire of summer itself. She was still the force that made the world tremble with desire, still the sovereign who chose whom to bless, whom to ignore. She asserted her divinity not through thunderous wrath, but through the quiet certainty that no mortal, no king, no ruler could ever own her. And thus the outcome of her myth was both sorrowful and majestic. A man broken, a land reshaped, a goddess reaffirmed. The heartbreak of the king became the heartbeat of the story, pulsing with warning and wonder. The fields might burn or they might bloom, but in both cases they bore On's touch, her reminder that love is freedom and sovereignty belongs only to the one who embodies it. Her presence remained in every summer that followed. Each year, when the solstice fires lit the hills, people felt her gaze upon them. Each kiss stolen in the meadows, each sigh carried on the wind, each shimmer of heat across the fields was a reminder of her sovereignty. The people did not mourn her untouchability, they celebrated it. For On, unpossessable, was the proof that beauty could live free, wild, and eternal in its fleetingness. The king was gone, his reign reduced to dust, his sorrow a tale for children and dreamers. But On endured. She always endures. For she is not bound to time or to men. She is the pulse of summer, the breath of desire, the fire that blazes even when it fades. And so the outcome of the myth is not an ending, but a truth. On cannot be possessed. She can only be worshipped, adored, cherished in the fleeting brilliance of her presence. To love her is to accept the ache of letting go. To seek to own her is to invite ruin. She remains forever sovereign, forever radiant, forever beyond the grasp,
of mortal hands.
What remains of Aine's story when the flames of passion have burned, when the tears have fallen, when the fields have withered and bloomed again? Only this, the recognition that desire is not meant to be caged, that beauty cannot be owned, that sovereignty belongs to those who honor its freedom. Her myth does not end with her disappearance, nor with the sorrow of the king who once sought to hold her. Instead, it endures as a meditation, a mirror held up to all who yearn, who ache, who dream of touching the divine. Desire, Aine teaches, is both fleeting and eternal. It is fleeting in the moment, a kiss upon trembling lips, a shimmer of light across the water, a burst of wild flowers in summer fields. Each vanishes almost as soon as it arrives, dissolving into memory, into longing. And yet it is eternal, for those moments never truly vanish. They echo through the soul, through the soil, through the stories told by firelight and whispered in lovers' ears. The fleeting becomes eternal precisely because it cannot be held. Aine herself embodies this paradox. She is lover and sovereign, radiant and untouchable, warm as the solstice sun, and distant as the stars reflected in midnight lakes. To some, she is cruel, for she gives herself in an embrace that sears and then withdraws, leaving only yearning. But to others, she is generous beyond measure, for she offers mortals a taste of the divine, however brief, a glimpse into the beauty that lies beyond the veil of ordinary days. Both views are true, and both are incomplete, for Aine is more than gift or punishment. She is the very truth of desire itself, wild, consuming, sovereign. When we speak of her, we do not merely recount the sorrow of a king or the lesson of a land. We touch something far deeper, the recognition that longing is part of being alive. To live is to yearn, to seek beauty, to hunger for connection. And yet, just as Aine resists possession, so too does life resist ownership. We cannot bind the sun, though we bask in its warmth. We cannot capture the wind, though it carries our breath. We cannot hold the seasons, though they shape our days. So too, we cannot bind desire. We can only honor it, surrender to it, let it pass through us as it chooses.
In Aine's myth, we find warning, but we also find wonder. The warning is clear. To attempt to claim what must remain free is to court ruin. The king learned this in heartbreak, his sovereignty dissolving into dust as his longing grew into an unhealable wound. His fate speaks to all who would mistake love for ownership, who would confuse desire with power. Yet the wonder is just as clear. To encounter Aine, even for a heartbeat, is to be transformed. Desire leaves us trembling, yes, but also more alive, more awake to the brilliance of the world. In the burning of her kiss, we learn that life is not measured by what we hold, but by what we feel. Aine lingers not only in the myth, but in the world around us. Each summer, when the days stretch long and golden, when the air shimmers with heat, and the lakes gleam like mirrors, we feel her presence. when laughter rises from meadows where lovers lie hidden in the tall grass, when bonfires blaze on solstice nights and sparks drift into the stars, Aine is there. She has not vanished into legend. She breathes in the warmth of every summer wind. She is sovereign still, not because she rules with command, but because she is inseparable from the very pulse of life. And yet she remains untouchable. We may feel her in the sunlight. We may taste her in a kiss. We may dream of her in the moments when longing overtakes us, but she will always slip away before we can bind her. That is her gift and her mystery. For what is truly eternal is never what we hold in our hands, but what we carry in our hearts. Her myth reminds us that heartbreak and beauty are often woven together. The king's sorrow was real, but so too was the wonder of his encounter. If he was broken by longing, it was only because he had glimpsed something greater than himself. His yearning became legend, and through that legend Aine's truth is preserved. To love her is to ache, but to ache is to know the depth of desire. And is not desire itself a kind of divinity? Is it not the force that drives us to seek, to create, to burn with life? Thus, Aine is not only the goddess of summer and seduction, she is the goddess of the human heart. She teaches us that longing is not weakness but power, that passion is not shame but fire. She shows us that the most profound encounters are not those that end in possession, but those that leave us trembling, transformed, unable to return to who we once were. To feel Aine's touch is to awaken. To lose it is to understand that awakening never truly leaves us, even when she does.
And so her story lingers, not in the halls of kings, but in the whispers of summer nights. Lovers murmur her name when they kiss beneath the solstice moon. Farmers feel her in the warmth that ripens their fields. Dreamers sense her in the shimmer of heat on the horizon. She is there in every sigh, in every heartbeat quickened by beauty, in every moment when longing overtakes reason. Aine is not gone. She is desire itself, eternal in its fleetingness, sovereign in its untouchability. As we reflect upon her, we come to see ourselves in her myth. For are we not all, in some way, seekers of Aine? Each of us has known the fire of longing, the sweetness of fleeting beauty, the sorrow of loss, the ache of yearning. Each of us has tasted desire's kiss and known it would not last, yet cherished it all the more because of its fragility. In Aine's story, we recognize our own. The dance between possession and release, between passion and sovereignty, between the mortal wish to bind and the divine truth that nothing truly beautiful can be bound. And so we return to the fields, the lakes, the midsummer winds. We close our eyes and feel her still, the goddess who gives herself freely, yet never wholly, who ignites the heart and then vanishes, leaving us aching yet grateful. We remember her not as tragedy, not as warning alone, but as the very essence of what makes life luminous. She is the ache in the chest when beauty passes before our eyes, the trembling in the soul when we stand before something greater than ourselves. She is the kiss that lingers, the flame that sears, the dream that haunts us long after waking. Ein is sovereignty, Ein is desire, Ein is the eternal fleeting. She is the haunting truth that love is not possession, but worship. She is the echo of laughter in the summer night, the warmth of fire on solstice hills, the shimmer of light across a still lake at dawn. She is here, always untouchable and yet unavoidable, forever beyond our grasp and forever within our hearts. And if on a warm night when the air is thick with the scent of wildflowers, you should feel the brush of a presence against your skin, soft as a lover's breath, do not reach for it. Do not try to hold it. Let it pass through you. Let it sear you. Let it awaken you. For that is Ein, reminding you that to desire is to live, to ache is to remember, and to let go is to love. The myth does not end. It lingers, it burns, it whispers, it beckons, and it leaves us longing still.